Ford takes the throne from Hendrick Motorsports, sweeping the front row, and Jimmy Johnson might not make the Daytona 500. Let's talk about Daytona Qualifying. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about 2024 Daytona 500 qualifying, where Joey Logano takes the throne from Hendrick Motorsports and Chevrolet to win the pole for the Daytona 500. Also, Michael McDowell, another Ford, will be starting second on Sunday on the front row. So the front row is set, and for the first time since 2012, a Chevrolet will not start out front on Sunday for the running of the Daytona 500. That was back in Carl Edwards in 2012 when he won that pole position in a Ford. So Hendrick Motorsports, Chevrolet especially, has dominated Daytona qualifying for years. I think the only time that Hendrick in that span hasn't won the pole qualifying was in 2014 with Austin Dillon, and then I believe Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in maybe it was 2019 maybe, and that was in a Hendrick Motorsports engine. So Hendrick Motorsports definitely a little bit disappointed. They've talked about in the past how important that is to Rick Hendrick to get the pole. I don't think it's really that important to everybody else in NASCAR as far as, fans go. Obviously winning the 500 is the big deal, and Hendrick hasn't done that since 2014 with Dale Jr., so they have some work to do on that. Maybe they will get that done this season, but just interesting to think that it took that long for them to get knocked off the front row. And this might have to do something with, I talk about Joey Logano winning the pole, two Fords now, it's two Ford starting out front in the Daytona 500, something we haven't seen. Chevrolet has dominated Daytona qualifying for over a decade, from the Gen 6 car into the next gen car, but I think you can relate it some to a new body style coming into NASCAR for Ford and Toyota, and not Chevrolet. Ford, Toyota, they have their new body styles. Chevrolet does not. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be slow at every racetrack. That doesn't mean they're going to be behind all year. It could, but I don't think this single-handedly indicates that, but I think that definitely has a thing that could correlate with tonight alone, qualifying alone, as to why Joey Logano was faster. The Toyotas were completely out of it. They were not even on the scoreboard. I think maybe there was Eric Jones in 20th. So definitely interesting there. The Toyotas were that slow. Even Denny Hamlin was really slow, three-time Daytona 500 winner. They probably got some handling aspects. Seems like we don't talk about Toyota much the week of Daytona every year until Sunday when they're leading in the Daytona 500. So it'll be interesting to see how that correlates moving through this week. We'll try to talk about each thing, break each thing down. But yes, Joey Logano on pole for the 500, definitely a confidence booster for him. His first ever super speedway pole at any super speedway track. He's won at Talladega, he won the 2015 Daytona 500, but he's never started on pole in a super speedway race. So congrats to Joey Logano on getting that. Definitely a bit of a confidence booster going into the 500. I don't know if it's the best sign. We see a lot of times where the pole sitter falls back in the actual race, but definitely a confidence booster, make you feel a little bit comfortable, give you a trophy to start out the NASCAR season for the two-time champ Joey Logano. Michael McDowell, 2021 Daytona 500 winner, will start second. He almost got the pole there. It looked like it was really close at first, and Joey Logano kind of pulled away on the Fox graphic. So that was definitely fun to watch tonight. But exciting for Michael McDowell to have that speed. And usually you don't see teams qualify up front. I mean, you can go back to Carl Edwards in 2012. You can go back to Dillon in 2014, or any of these drivers. You can go back to Danica Patrick in 2013. Usually the drivers and teams, it was Stewart-Haas Racing in 2013. That was Roush in 2012. In 2014, it was RCR. Those are teams that typically have fast engines, fast race cars. That's something we haven't seen out of Front Row Motorsports for multiple years, until the last couple of years, until they got that Daytona 500 win. So it's definitely interesting to see that, and potentially that could be a sign of things to come for Michael McDowell, that they're no longer a back-running team. You're not going to see a team that runs 30th every week win the pole, right? You're only going to see teams that contend, not even if it's in the Daytona 500, but contend week in and week out, have fast race cars typically throughout the year, are the ones that typically qualify up front. Hence, Joey Logano, two-time champion. Michael McDowell won a race last year, has won the Daytona 500. So this could be a sign and a step in the right direction for that racing team, that Front Row Motorsports team. And it's exciting because Michael McDowell and his team have excelled tremendously over the last 3 or 4 years, ever since they won that 2021 Daytona 500. So let's go ahead. We'll talk a little bit about the open race cars, because there are 6 cars that going into tonight were not guaranteed into the Daytona 500. 2 of those can guarantee their spot, leaving 2 more spots open for the Daytona 500 tomorrow night in the dual races. Those 2 spots were satisfied tonight. Anthony Alfredo is going to be in the 2024 Daytona 500. He no longer has to race his way in. And then David Reagan will be once again starting the Daytona 500. If I'm not mistaken, I think David Reagan has a win at Daytona. Daytona. I think it was a summer race. I know he's got to win at Talladega. So David Ragan definitely going to be one to watch. I don't think he's going to be a favorite to win. I don't think he'll be in contention for the win, but we do know he can race at those type of racetracks, those style of racetracks. So David Ragan should be sort of fun to watch on Sunday in the Daytona 500. He did make it. On the flip side of that, our other open cars, which is going to be J.J. Yeley, who was just announced today, actually. There was just 24 hours ago right now, we didn't know who was going to drive the 44 NY Racing Team car, which is certainly a little bit scary for that team. Kaz Grala in the 36 car, B.J. McLeod in the 78, trying to make every race this season, and Jimmy Johnson are the drivers that will still be in open cars, will not be guaranteed into the Daytona 500. Probably the biggest name out of all of those is Jimmy Johnson, 7-time champ, Daytona 500 winner, 2006, 2013. He won the 500. He's not guaranteed in the Daytona 500 under these current rules in a Toyota for the first time. So it'll be interesting to see, can Jimmy Johnson get in tomorrow night in the dual races? It's hard to say whether he can or not. Only one small thing has to go wrong. If you're Jimmy Johnson, I would say, or really any of these drivers, the main goal is don't speed on your pit stop, because there's a good chance we'll have that green flag pit stop that we have every season in the dual races, unless there's a caution or something. But a lot of times we have that green flag stop. Don't speed on pit road, and just try to stay up there in front in the race. It'll actually be Jimmy Johnson versus J.J. Yeley. So I think Jimmy Johnson has a decent shot. I'm not sure how fast that 44 car is. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to stay with the pack. I'm confident Jimmy Johnson in that Toyota will be able to stay in the pack and race well within the pack. So don't get caught up in a wreck. Don't mess up on pit road. Don't have a wheel fly off on pit road or off the car on the racetrack, which we see sometimes. Just manage everything to the best of your ability and see where that goes, because that's all you can really do when you're talking about finishing somewhere specific ahead of one other driver at Daytona in a 60-lap dual race. So it'll be exciting to see. We'll have to watch that tomorrow. We also have Kaz Grala versus B.J. McLeod. Poor Kaz Grala. I think it was last year for the Money team. Took off. Car completely broke down. Didn't get to run a lap, or he was bouncing up and down or something crazy. Then this year, something's wrong with the throttle and with the gear shifts. It's disconnected, so unable to shift gears. Very frustrating for Kaz Grala. That is something with the team, a issue every single season on the race car. He doesn't get to do a qualifying lap, but he made the Daytona 500 a year ago. Maybe he can make the Daytona 500 again for a different team this year. And then, of course, you have B.J. McLeod. Poor B.J. is sold his charter, is racing for his life, trying to race every race in the Cup Series season in 2024, I believe. At least most of the oval races. That team, I know, is trying to make every race in the 2024 season, the 78 car. So it would be a shame if they had to go home. But two drivers tomorrow night following the duels will go home empty-handed, and they will not be there on Sunday for the Daytona 500. But that's it. That's really all there's to talk about after Daytona 500 qualifying. We have the duels tomorrow night, which should be exciting. That will set the entire lineup for the Daytona 500 on Sunday, hopefully weather depending. But we're hopeful we'll get that race in. So let's have our fingers crossed for Sunday weather. Obviously, I'll do a race for you following tomorrow night's Thursday night dual races at Daytona. And then, of course, the big event, I'll have a post-race reaction to that as well following the 2024 Daytona 500. So that's it. That's all there is to talk about. And, of course, let's get rowdy.